Okay, welcome everyone. Just before we do start, we have Gord McNeely is here, subbing in for Robert Henderson today. And can I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda? So moved, Darlene, thank you. And I'd first of all just like to thank you for coming in. We really appreciate you accepting the invitation. We would like to be out of, we have until about noon, probably shortly before. So if, I think like probably was discussed, until about 10:30 to present, and then we'll go into questions, if that's all right. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll just do questions at the end. Okay, and with that, the floor is yours, and we look forward to hearing from you.
So, good morning, Chair, honorable members. Thank you for having us here today. We are Buddhist nuns from Great Wisdom Buddhist Institute. My name is Sabrina, and with me today are Venerables Yvonne and Joanna. And I'm from Yorba Linda, so it's a suburb in Orange County, California, and have been in PEI for over 5 years now. I've discovered that PEI has the best potatoes, and I like to say that we like them so much it shows in the color of our robes, because it's brown.
Good morning, I'm Joanna. I'm from Cupertino, California, which is near the San Francisco area. I've been in PEI for about 4 years now, and I used to think freezing cold was anything below 25 degrees, and so now when it's 0 and I think it's warm, I'm very proud of myself. Thank you for having us.
Okay, hi, I'm Yvonne, and I'm from Taipei, Taiwan, and I moved to Christchurch, New Zealand when I was 14. This is my 9th year on the island, but my first time here in the house, and we're a little nervous. I think almost as nervous as the days leading up to me becoming a Buddhist nun and shaving off all my hair. To start, we would like to thank you for the efforts this committee has put into environmental sustainability. This is very significant for us because compassion is at the core of Buddhist faith. The Buddhist way of showing compassion includes caring for our environment, water, children, and senior citizens. And we appreciate Mr. Digo as constituents of his district in hopes of opening up avenues for communication. We are grateful to come before this committee to share our plans for our sustainable growth on our land and natural environments. And we hope that by engaging in open communication with you, we can build a trusting relationship with our local community based on respect and mutual understanding. One of the most important vows for Buddhists is to not harm others and to cultivate kindness. So we hope that by sharing who we are and what we value and also listening to your thoughts, we can work together to protect the island's future. That is, to maximize the benefits we bring and to minimize any potential unwanted consequences. We consider ourselves as part of PEI. PEI's future is also our future. So please see the outline of our presentation today. We will be introducing GWI and our history, what we have done to integrate and contribute to the local community, our relationship with other Buddhist entities, land ownership and land use of GWI and individual nuns, parents who own homes on the island, and addressing concerns that were brought to our attention. To briefly introduce Great Wisdom Buddhist Institute, GWI is a locally registered nonprofit and charity. It's also a monastery for Buddhist nuns who chose a path dedicated to bring happiness to ourselves and others. What we do every day inside the monastery is to learn. We follow the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism. There are hundreds of Buddhist texts that we study, memorize, and debate on. We also practice applying this ancient wisdom in our daily life to improve our quality of life. The mission of GWI is to offer this Buddhist curriculum to females around the world. We hope that females can have the same rights to study and practice Buddhism just like our male counterparts. GWI is financially supported from the donations of our laity, friends, and parents around the world. Laity are lay people who practice our faith, much like Christian parishioners. They are not monks or nuns. People donate because they appreciate our mission, have attended our classes or retreats, or have daughters or friends in the monastery. We will address our finances a little later in the presentation.
So like all charities, we have a board of directors, and our board was nominated by the outgoing members of the board. And the current members were elected into office unanimously. Board members are nominated for their Buddhist practice and faith, shared vision to sustain an enriching environment for women to learn Buddhism, as well as contribute to the diversity and overall dynamic of our greater PEI and Canadian communities.
We currently have about 500 nuns, and our ages range from 12 to 70, with the average age at 28. We expect new enrollment of roughly 40 nuns per year. Our nuns are either citizens or permanent residents of Canada or are here on work permits and student visas. And our nuns come from all over the world. Before joining the monastery, we were living in the secular world, just like you. We have a nun who is getting her PhD in public health at UCLA, and her expertise has proven to be very helpful during COVID this year. She often says how much respect she has for Dr. Morrison and her team and how they handle this pandemic. We have a couple of nuns who received master's and PhDs in atmospheric science and are knowledgeable in climate change, and so they habitually like to observe changes in the weather.
And I like to, they're spot on changes with weather, so I like to look at what they're wearing to figure out if I should layer up.
And one of our nuns has a background in farming, and so when we started cultivating our own vegetable garden this year, it was great to have her overlook the process. As for myself, I was studying to get my PhD in health psychology, and so whenever we lead mindfulness sessions, I'm the nerdy one who likes to talk about stress hormones and scientific studies. We also have nuns with graduate degrees in mathematics, economics, chemical engineering, and nuns who are teachers, nurses, musicians, artists, and working in the medical fields.
Prince Edward Island's sense of community is like no other place in the world, and we've benefited countless times from the helping hand of a kind passerby. There's this one time I was trying to figure out which treat to get for my elderly neighbor, and suddenly a lady appeared and suggested I get the molasses cookies because they were her husband's favorite. And after she left the store, I saw her walking back with newly bought molasses cookies, and she smiled and said, "Take one for the road, then you'll know if you want them next time." So though we were complete strangers, she treated me like family. When we heard that TCAP Family Aquatics and Fitness Center in Eastern PEI needed renovation before it could be used, we wanted to help out. So many nuns told me when they thought of the seniors, they thought of their own grandparents. We knew winter was just around the corner, and many would have nowhere to go for exercise. We spent days painting and scrubbing. It was rewarding to see the Wellness Center finally up and running with the community putting it to good use. A few days after we cleaned up the Wellness Center, we were surprised to receive stacks and stacks of pizza. It was from Dan, the owner of our local Famous Peppers in Montague. He was at the Wellness Center when we were there and told us he wanted us to know people in the community supported us, and he was one of them. We've learned that when everyone does just a little to reach out and help your neighbors, it builds community. In our culture, seniors are treasures to the community. They are the wise ones with years of life experience. One Christmas, our nuns wanted to acknowledge each senior and staff member at the Manor in Montague with a unique handmade gift made from clay and recyclables. I gave a gift to a senior with her name and the words, "Just for you," on it. Her face lit up with joy as she said, "Just for me?" We didn't do much. We just wanted to give back a little kindness to the seniors and our local community. Seniors have a sort of groundedness, and it's just comforting to know that somebody before you had faced life's challenges and still persevered.
As Buddhists, we believe there's a deep connection between our environment and us. The earth gives to us and nurtures us and should be celebrated and preserved. As nuns, we practice some organic farming in our small vegetable garden in Vernon River. This year, we've tried growing a small row of cucumbers, strawberries, tomatoes, and pumpkins. We enjoy gardening, but our vegetables are definitely not enough to eat, so we purchase most of our produce locally. We feel that practicing some organic farming is a lifestyle that shows respect to the land, water, and wildlife. We also love trees. Over the past few years, we've planted over 8,500 native trees in Eastern PEI. Every year, we join Women's Institute roadside cleanup to celebrate our gratitude towards the land. Last year, we picked up 250 bags of trash, and it's become one of our favorite activities. As Buddhists, we're deeply committed to being stewards of the land and to sharing its bounty with all living beings for many years to come. So the cornerstones that set the foundation for all development decisions, including revitalizing the natural ecology and fostering sustainable practices.
Since mindfulness is very core to our monastery, after many years of learning and practice, we wanted to share our experiences to support mental health. To have a healthy community, nation, or humanity at large, we need to better understand the causes of mental health challenges and have the tools to cope with it. Since 2017, we've led mindfulness sessions for over 2,800 participants in 34 different organizations, such as Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Bard Mission Course for the Law Society of PEI, Veterans Affairs, Women's Institute, and the PEI Department of Social Development and Housing. Participants have told us that after attending mindfulness sessions, they weren't as stressed and felt much calmer. One healthcare worker that participated in the session said that she was so stressed that she couldn't sleep well for an entire year. After attending our mindfulness sessions, she could finally sleep at night, and it was the best she felt all year. Another participant said challenges often left her anxious and unhappy. After the sessions, though, she noticed how she kept thinking from other people's point of view and felt much happier. With the onset of COVID, we have been looking for ways to provide support to not only our island community, but also hospitals and groups that have been hit really hard. We've provided mindfulness sessions for several hospitals in Toronto and the States, and also a law firm on Bay Street and JP Morgan on Wall Street. All in all, it has been humbling to hear the positive feedback. In addition to contributing to health and well-being of our community, we also hope to support our local economy. This is our home, and we want to see it doing well. So far this year, we've purchased over 76,000 pounds of PEI potatoes. So I said we like potatoes. By the way, our nuns love potatoes and have even created recipes for potato bread and desserts. You might be wondering why you rarely see nuns at Superstore or Sobeys. Since our monastic precepts discourage things like shopping to avoid distractions, and because we buy such large amounts, most of our food is delivered, but we still purchase locally. In 2019 alone, we spent about $10 million on local expenditures, including food, gas, clothing, winter boots, etc. For our last construction project, which was the dorm in Brudenell, there were over 100 local workers involved, and about 96% of the building materials were purchased locally. We have some things coming in on cargo from overseas because many of our laity live overseas and donate goods from where they're from. As Buddhist nuns, we have precepts on how we should appreciate and accept everything that we're given. And sometimes our nuns just miss things from home. Many of them are still getting used to eating oatmeal for breakfast and are excited to see food from their childhood. We also hope to contribute to the cultural tourism in PEI because we think every part of the world should know how beautiful PEI is. Every year since 2015, except this year because of COVID, we partner with Gwbi and work with local organizations, tourist sites, and catering companies to host our Buddhist retreats. In addition to attending Buddhist classes, participants come from all over the world to experience the beauty and culture of this island. They visit PEI short-term and go home afterwards. One of the
Questions we hear the most is the relationship between our spiritual teacher, the monks, nuns, and laity. I think the relationship is best understood as a community, not unlike the island community. One of the things I appreciate most about the PEI community is the way islanders care about one another. For instance, when someone in the community is ill, the entire community comes together. Someone will throw a benefit concert. Others will help cook and clean. When a neighbor goes to Florida for the winter, their neighbors will help and look after their house. Within our Buddhist community, it is much the same. When our parents or laity come to PEI, they turn to us for help because we're more familiar with the island way of life and they know us. Likewise, we help them navigate life in PEI, introducing local eats such as the farmer's market and helping to translate when there are language barriers. But this close relationship is also what causes the most confusion, as it seems people tend to think we're all the same. For instance, back in 2015, we received an investigation order from Iraq. At first, we were very puzzled. And although in the end the investigation was closed, we did gain a better understanding as to why it had occurred, which is the confusion about the relationships within our Buddhist community, especially between the monastery and laity. We're not good at communicating our stories, and so we do feel responsible for causing so much concern in the community. So to clarify this relationship, we, GWBI, are the Buddhist nuns, not monks. Sometimes people call us lady monks and call Gwbi the monks man nuns. So the monks are male and nuns are female. And recently someone contacted GWBI regarding property they thought belonged to the monks, and actually it turned out the property didn't belong to the monks either. The monks are like our spiritual brothers. However, GBIS and GWBI are independent entities with separate finances, facilities, etc. And honestly, I don't really know how the monks, who are all men, can tell us how the nuns and make decisions on how we live. Our spiritual teacher, Zenru, who guides us in our Buddhist practice, is also not involved in the day-to-day operations of GWBI or any of our decision-making. Her role is to explain to us the Buddhist teachings and provide insights from Buddhist perspectives. As mentioned earlier, GWBI has its own leadership team and board of nuns who oversee our daily operations. Regarding our relationship with our laity, inspired by the Buddhist teachings of compassion, many laity chose to start businesses locally or get involved in charitable endeavors that align with the Buddhist faith. Some laity have opened vegetarian restaurants like Splendid Essence right here in Charlottetown. Others run a nonprofit such as Moonlight PI Charity Sanctuaries in giving animals a home, and the Buffalo Park is near Montague. Or they contribute to the community, such as donating to food banks across the island like Moonlight Charities. And by the way, Buddhists love the term moonlight because it's a metaphor for wisdom and compassion, so you might see the name moonlight in many of the entities' names, but it does not mean that they are related. The laity practice the Buddhist values in these endeavors, but they're just real people carrying on with their real lives. As nuns, we only give spiritual guidance to the laity so they can apply their Buddhist faith at work, but we are not involved in their daily operations. Of course, there are also laity who just come to a couple of retreats whom we don't know who they are. So as you can see, our Buddhist community is a close-knit community that grows organically, just like the island community.
Now we'd like to share with you a little bit of GWBI's history and plans. In November 2011, 14 nuns came to PEI to study closely with our spiritual teacher, Zenru, who had moved to PEI a few years prior, and she has considered PEI her home. Actually, after being in PEI all these years, she's told us the many things she loves about the island. For instance, she's always telling the Buddhist laity who visit that they have to try PEI potatoes, blueberries, and cow's ice cream. She once shared with us how she was stuck on a plane in Europe when transferring flights. And when the airline let the passengers off the plane to rest at the airport, she finally found a bite to eat. The server brought her a dish and proudly said, "These potatoes are exquisite. They're from Prince Edward Island." And her eyes lit up, thrilled to have PEI potatoes all the way in Europe. So she proudly shares the story at many of our retreats. Anyway, so when she learned we were coming to PEI, she suggested we experience the winter first before making any long-term plans. After a couple of years, not only did we survive the winters, we fell in love with the island. We found that our Buddhist values and island values were very similar. We then decided to make PEI home and establish GWBI so other females could come to study the Buddhist teachings. In 2012, there were about 70 nuns, and GWBI moved into the MacLeod farm in Vernon River, which is about 183 acres. We pulled in mini homes to serve as our dorms and classrooms. We cleaned up the garage, as you can see, and had local contractors help us turn it into a prayer hall. This was the before and after. Space was tight, but there were no complaints. We were just grateful this island provided us a place to live and study Buddhism. When it became apparent that PEI was becoming our home, we started to plan for our dream, to build our monastery. We longed to live in a traditional monastery, the true home for Buddhist nuns. Although we really love our Vernon River community, the shape of the land there is long and narrow, which is not well suited for a traditional Buddhist monastery. In 2015, when GWBI had about 130 nuns, we purchased the land for our future monastery in Brudenell, where all the nuns could live. Our plan is when we eventually all move to Brudenell, the campus at Vernon River will serve as accommodations for our retreats.
This is our long-term development plan in Brudenell. In 2018, we presented the plan to the municipality and held a public consultation at Roma at Three Rivers National Historic Site for the environmental impact assessment. After our EIA was approved, the municipality adopted our master plan and rezoned this area to institutional, which would allow for the construction of our monastery campus. However, as you can see here, the majority of the site will be green space, including farmland, forests, and gardens. The maximum capacity of our monastery is 1,400. This is not the number of nuns we plan to have in the near future. In order to maintain the ecological integrity of the monastery area, we worked with the local government and professionals to perform an environmental inventory. With minimal impact on the land and environment, 1,400 is the maximum capacity this area can hold, not the number we will be having in upcoming years. And actually, with our current expectations of about 40 new enrollments each year, it will take us over 20 years to reach 1,400, and that's if everything goes well.
So just 2 weeks ago, after our development permit was rejected, we made a decision to forego the opportunity to appeal for this construction project.
And it was not an easy decision for us. In fact, I originally voted to file for appeal. After our permit was turned down, many suggested that we submit an appeal to IRAC since our application had met every single requirement. They said it would make a strong case, and I thought so too. I knew that if we didn't continue with our development plans, there'd be considerable challenges. Our plan to build the gatehouse in 2019 was approved as a part of our overall development plan, so we had assumed the entire construction plan was approved and had invested our time and money in this project. Because without the dorms, prayer hall, and other buildings, it'd be kind of pointless to have a gatehouse. Also, many of our donors have average incomes and saved up for several years to make a donation for the construction. Now we have to explain to them why the project is not moving forward. We also needed this dormitory to provide better living conditions for our student nuns, since they are living in tight quarters, scattered across eastern PEI, as all of our facilities have reached maximum capacity. So right now, about 220 of us live in Vernon River, 220 in Brudenell, 65 in Lobster Shanty Montague, and we all want to live together under one roof. Because buildings at Lobster Shanty are very old and it would be difficult to maintain better living standards, the Deputy Fire Marshal advised these 65 nuns may need to start finding other living quarters. With the best interests, the health, and well-being of the nuns in mind, we had originally planned to move them to Brudenell after the construction of our new dorm. But after our permit was denied, we're now trying to find other solutions. In case you're wondering why the nuns in Montague wear gray robes, it's because they were from a different group and culture than GWBI. After years of observation, they wanted to learn from the program and faculty at GWBI, and they are now in the process of amalgamating into GWBI. So there will still only be one monastery for the Buddhist nuns at PEI.
So just like Honorable Sabrina mentioned, we know we will be facing a difficult future in reality. Bearing in mind the difficulties that the rejection of our development permit would bring, after rounds of discussions, GWBI's Board of Directors voted to not appeal. Through this decision, we would like to show you our intentions, which is a message to our community to say, we care about your concerns. We would like to take the time to communicate and answer questions. We would like to listen to your stories and to share ours with you. As Buddhists, this is an important practice for us. This is why we've chosen to not appeal and postpone our plan to build our home. We would much rather build our home with your support and understanding.
An islander friend once told us that land is in the DNA of every islander. The longer we're in PEI, the more we're appreciating what this stands for. Land is precious and deeply ingrained in the heart of every islander. This is something we, as Buddhists, are learning to understand and respect, especially if many of us plan to live here until our hairs turn gray, though you might not see them.
I would like to thank Islanders for showing me why PEI is a special place. We've been friends with a local farmer for many years. He's like a grandpa to us. He and his 90-year-old brother share with us a lot of stories and the history of the land in our area. He taught us that every piece of farmland we see now was because their ancestors had once chopped down all the trees with their bare hands. There was one time we were walking with him on the farm with lush crops. He stared at the land and said, "Many people in the world are starving. If he could keep the land productive and provide more food, that would be his contribution to the world." His words left a very deep imprint in me. I could feel the pride of island farmers from the expression on his face. And there was once we were invited to attend diversity celebrations in a few schools. A class of grade 5 students asked us 75 questions, including, did you have a boyfriend before? Why do you shave your head? And why do you wear those cool robes? They actually said we look like Jedis in Star Wars. We also got to ask them some questions. A lot of young kids raised their hands and said their dream is to become farmers. The reason was simple. They said, because my grandpa was a farmer and my dad is a farmer. From their smiles, I got to understand more about the simple lifestyle this island wishes to preserve, and it assured me that PI is the perfect place for us.
As far as the land, GWBI currently owns 183 acres in Vernon River and 484 acres in Brudenell, and that's a total of 667 acres. Of the 667 acres, 290 acres is arable land, including around 10 acres that was originally overgrown with 1 to 3 meter tall trees that we removed to restore the land into farmland. All of the 290 acre arable land is currently in production as we are working with small local organic farmers. Right now, roughly 11 acres are used for infrastructure of a monastery. The remaining 366 acres are kept as green space, such as forests, wetlands, gardens, etc. Some people have asked us why we bought more land than needed for the monastery buildings. For our Buddhist practice, it is ideal for our monastery to be surrounded by nature, not casinos or pubs. So we bought the land around our home to maintain the tranquility for the long run and preserve the natural environment for future generations. From our conversations with islanders, I feel we have very similar values, which is for the serenity of PEI to never change, and that was why we bought the land. You'll notice for our land in Brudenell, there is a larger piece of land toward the east, and that's where we plan to have our monastery, and a small piece of land on the northwest of Brudenell Point Road, circled here in blue. It's a little small, I don't know if you can see it. We bought these two pieces from WJD Farms in 2015, and the seller requested that the two be bought together. Circle's a little small, but if you can see it, the land to the south of Brudenell Point Road is 47 acres with about 38 acres of arable land, and there's 87 acres to the right of that has about 58 acres of arable land, again circled here in blue. And as we mentioned earlier, all of this is currently being farmed by local organic farmers and serves as green space around the monastery. And as you can see here, GWBI has donated 7 acres of land to Island Nature Trust. A few years ago, a local consultant suggested we meet with Island Nature Trust. And when we met with their director and heard how volunteers camped out at beaches to protect the piping plovers, we were blown away by the measures taken to take care of these animals. I still remember the level of detail she knew about their lifestyle and the deep compassion she showed. It reminds me of a time our nuns discovered a bird nest with eggs, but no mama bird around. Worried a raccoon would get to the eggs, our nuns took turns standing guard. They even parked a car for the nuns on night shift. When the eggs finally hatched, our nuns were overjoyed and would watch the baby birds grow up from a distance. Caring for animals is a great passion of ours, so hearing Island Nature Trust mission really encouraged us. And we hope to continue collaborations with Island Nature Trust and other local sustainable environmental organizations. We want to explain the green border that was shown to the government a few times. We were advised by our local consultant who recommended that we show this limitation on land purchase so people wouldn't think we're buying off the island or buying land in Surrey or Greenwich. So that's the green perimeter you see here. The outline does not indicate GWBI will buy everything within this 1250 acre area. It's to show that we intend to buy land around our monastery. And actually, GWBI can't buy everything within this area as there are government-owned properties, public properties, as well as homes. Included in these properties are houses that belong to GWBI. GWBI currently owns 7 houses in Brudenell, all of which are in use. During this pandemic, every house has been used for isolation purposes. Because the monastery is communal living, we have especially strict measures for COVID to minimize risk of contamination. We've been in voluntary lockdown since March and have stopped receiving visitors. When a nun comes into contact with anyone from outside the monastery, they are required to self-isolate for 30 days before returning to the monastery. Whenever someone has an appointment, meeting, or even an accidental encounter, they'd self-isolate at one of the houses. And we couldn't do this without these houses, as our current facilities don't have the capacity for self-isolation and quarantine. So the 3 of us are currently in self-isolation, and every single day I long to be back in the monastery with all of our nuns. And when we're not in a pandemic, each house serves a specific purpose that currently cannot be met at our campuses as we fit maximum capacity. One of the houses serves as a reception house year-round, where islanders and guests can come to learn more about our culture. 2 of the houses are seasonal housing for great Buddhist scholars who visit the island every year for about 6 months to give Buddhist teachings. 2 houses are used year-round as accommodations for the support laity who work at GWBI, otherwise they would each have to buy their own house. Because the rooms in Vernon River and Brudenell are all maxed out, 2 of the houses are used for when a nun gets sick so she can have peace and quiet and also be quarantined. If there aren't any nuns who are sick, these 2 houses are multi-purpose during the day, so none of our houses are left vacant year-round. When our monastery is completed, we will have areas to fulfill these purposes. We'd originally thought that this would happen within the next 5 to 10 years, but now we're not so sure about the timeline. But if and when that day does arrive and we no longer have use for these houses, GWBI is definitely open to selling them at a fair market price.
So now that I look back at our housing situation, I think we're kind of stuck in the riddle. We know that when we purchase houses, people are concerned, fearing this will worsen the housing crisis in PI. We purchased these homes only as an alternative housing solution in place of our monastery buildings. I wish we didn't need the additional housing, yet we weren't permitted to continue constructing our dormitories because people fear we have bought houses. And so to sustain ourselves, we could only purchase houses so that our nuns could have a place to live. But we would rather not build for now because we would like to build a monastery that everyone welcomes and embraces. But the reality of it is that now we're faced with a pressing situation. We need to really think about our next steps and how we can build a solution for our lack of housing. It would be appreciated if you could provide us with some suggestions.
We've heard most of the concerns surrounding land are not specific to GWBI, but include those affiliated with GWBI, such as individual nuns. And just as an aside, I don't think I've ever looked up the word affiliated as much as I thought I would. I always thought that it meant related or connected, and so if you asked me if I was affiliated with the monastery, I'd say, yeah, of course. Because affiliated means the monastery has control over my possessions, and seeing as I have my own bank account, which is actually joint with my mother in California, I now know I am not affiliated with GWBI, and the same goes for all of our nuns. And in the spirit of full disclosure, we've asked the individual nuns about the properties that they've purchased. Out of the 500 nuns, less than 10 have purchased properties with their families. The land is theirs, and they purchased it with their own funds. And as a aside, not many nuns are looking to buy land. Again, GWBI doesn't have the right to disclose an individual's private information like any organization, but because many concerns about land are about the individuals, and for full disclosure, the total acreage owned by individual nuns is about 270 acres. There are only 2 houses in Brudenell that are owned by individual nuns. Through the help of our Brudenell neighbors, these nuns have truly experienced the island community. A couple of years ago, one of our nuns received dozens of phone calls from her islander friend asking if her house was available. A well-respected family in the area had just lost their home to a fire. Our nun was touched by the way the community came together to help this family and was happy they could live in her house until their new house was built. Right now, both of the houses owned by our nuns are rented out to islanders who are living there long-term.
So since our development permit was turned down, some concerns have been raised. One of the top concerns was how our Buddhist laity has been buying land and houses. At first, we were pretty confused because we didn't understand how GWBI's development permit had anything to do with laity and their houses, as we are separate from one another. We later realized that this must be because we didn't do the best job telling our story and explaining the relationship between nuns and our parents, the laity. Even though we can't speak for them for full transparency, we thought we could still include a small section about our parents in today's presentation. When many of the parents living on the island heard how the monastery project was denied, they shared this news with our overseas parents. Unable to come to the island, many parents were worried that their children were not welcomed on the island. Since then, the monasteries received many letters and phone calls. We didn't want our parents to feel this way because islanders have been extremely kind and welcoming to us. We also wanted to take every opportunity to address the concerns of our fellow islanders. So we were kind of stuck in the middle, wanting to both comfort our parents and our island community. Of the letters we received, some were from parents who bought homes on the island. These homes are not owned by the monastery, but some parents knew that we'd be coming here today and asked to have their letters read. Because we're limited on time, I've only picked a few excerpts to share. This letter is from a parent in Three Rivers. Hello everyone, I'm a parent and I can't speak for the Buddhist nuns, but wanted to share my story here. I have 2 children in the monastery. When they joined the monastery, we missed each other a lot. Since then, we would fly halfway around the globe to visit them twice a year. After the first 2 years, my husband and I decided to buy a house because of our frequent travels to PEI. Last winter, I was stuck in the house for 2 days when I experienced my first snowstorm. Luckily, my neighbor came to rescue me. I was so grateful to have a community that cared. I always wanted to give back. A few months ago, when COVID started to spread, I thought about what I could do for my second home. I called my friends in Asia, many of them who were parents that had bought homes in PEI. All of them wanted to help. We started to raise funds. Within a short period of time, many people wanted to support PEI frontline workers. Some of my friends' kids donated their allowance. A friend donated 5,000 masks right away. It was hard to ship everything from the factory to PEI, but we did it. We donated to local hospitals and nursing homes. I felt honored to give back. I am a mother just like you are a parent. I want to give my children a warm and safe home. With no fear, no judgment, only smiles, just like what you gave me. I want to give my children a clean environment, under the blue sky, drink clean water, breathe fresh air, just like you want to give your children. I thought I did very well up until last week. After reading some of the comments on social media, I started to fear. I began to have sleepless nights. I worry about what will happen next. As a newcomer, a mom, I am just like you. We are different, but we are all interconnected. I will always be grateful for what this island has given me and will always want to pay back. Sincerely yours, a mom from Three Rivers. Now, some parents, like the mother, have the privilege to stay on PI all year round, but there are many that are unable to do so. It may be for financial reasons, elderly parents to care for in Asia, or family businesses that they need to tend to. Though they are unable to be on the island, they consider PI their second home and want to give back to the community when they can, much like the parents who had donated PPE in the letter I just read. Another parent with a house on McCollum Drive in Brudenell told us that since she visited her daughter, a Buddhist nun, every year, she decided to split the costs and purchase a home with her friend. She hoped she could retire and move to PI in the future. She wrote, "I would love to move to the island soon and live close to the monastery, because stated in many Buddhist ancient sutras, living near a monastery where Buddhist monks or nuns upholding precepts live will bring luck to the residents in the area. So in Asia, we as parents and laity would very much love to live close to the monastery. This year, because of COVID, I am unable to come to the island. I learned from the news, many islanders think us buying properties in PEI have caused trouble so that the monastery cannot be built. I am very sorry. I am working for my dream to live in PEI, but if it doesn't work out, I am open to selling it back to the island too. We never knew purchasing our own house here would bring so much trouble. Again, I want to say thank you for providing this beautiful environment for my children to study here. It's allowed me to more easily find hope and kindness within the hearts of others. Thank you, Cindy." One parent once said that she had wanted to move to PEI to be close to her child, but after calculating the cost, she realized the basic cost of living in PEI was about 4 to 5 times higher than her cost in Taiwan. Another parent remarked that moving to PEI meant she had to work 10-hour days for 3 consecutive years. A great deal of planning is necessary to be able to actually make the move. With the challenges as newcomers to PEI, many parents say that they got through it only with the help of islanders. One parent living in Three Rivers expressed her gratitude for their neighbor who would often pull them out of ditches. Another parent said that once he parked his car in Charlottetown and stood in front of the meter trying to figure out how many coins to put in. Suddenly an islander walked by and dropped a few coins in. The parent was so touched by that random act of kindness.
Speaking of parents buying houses on the island, if possible, I'd also like to seek your advice. Because last year my mom came to visit and lived on the island for about 6 months. My dad had passed away the year before, so I encouraged her to stay longer so she could be close to the monasteries. And I also knew that some of the Buddhist laity could help take care of her, because she is getting up there in age, and so I worry about her living alone in California. At the end of their stay, she told me she was thinking about buying a place in PEI. And I immediately said, "No, you cannot buy a house here, because I know you won't stay in the winter because it's too cold, and also because you wouldn't be able to stay for more than 6 months. So I told her, "You cannot buy a house here." And when my mom continued to tell me a friend had taken her to see some apartments in Montague, I told her, "No, those are affordable housing for island families. You can live with a friend when you visit." And while she tried to tell me she preferred to live on her own because she doesn't like feeling like a guest all the time, I was adamant she couldn't buy a place in PEI. and I felt bad because I could tell I really hurt her. A while later, I had heard some nuns wondering if it could help if there were residences in an area where our parents and laity could live so they wouldn't take houses from islanders. But when I once shared this idea with an islander friend just to hear their thoughts, they said, "No, I don't think that's a good idea. It's much better if everyone is out within the community." And then they added, don't let anybody know you had this idea to build a residential community, otherwise you'll scare people." And at that moment, my heart plummeted, because I really didn't know what my mom could do. And I know many nuns are facing the same challenge, and so if you have any ideas, we would greatly appreciate it.
Every time I hear Venerable Joanna share this story, it saddens me. I can see our nuns doing what they can do to protect the island because they feel this is their home. But we need your help to figure out a better solution. If I were to summarize all this into one point, I would say there are stories reflecting the hardships of immigrants. If you look beyond the scope of land and houses, you will see the hopes and struggles for newcomers. We're not saying that Buddhists are perfect and don't make mistakes. Sometimes we can be ignorant because we lack local knowledge. But after reading some online comments, I feel it is also unfair to think there were a bunch of rich and heartless criminals coming to take over. For instance, people might think that Asians owning vacant homes care nothing about the island and are only here to take away resources and jeopardize opportunities for future generations. But after knowing some of our parents' stories, you might learn why they cannot be here year-round and how hard they are fighting to move here and how much they wish to pay back to PI. We may make mistakes, but we're willing to learn and fix problems. We will not insist on doing something that will harm others. When our laity heard the concerns and asked if they should sell their house or reject offers from islanders that wanted to sell their house, we don't know what to say. As Buddhist nuns, normally we only provide our laity with Buddhist teachings. But since we moved to the island earlier, our laity come and ask us our experiences in settling on the island. But we are not locals either, so we would like to direct them to our local resources. We hope that PI government and residents can work with us to find a better way for Buddhists to fit in. For instance, maybe you can have an educational workshop with our laity and parents who own homes on PI when they visit here during our Buddhist retreats. I'm sure Buddhists would love to learn about the history of PI and respect all that matters to islanders. And you can hear their stories too. We believe the best way to overcome the difficulties is to work together hand in hand.
In our efforts to engage in open dialogue, we wanted to address some of the concerns we've heard, especially as some of them are rumors circulating on the internet. The first concern we've heard is whether we pay taxes. We get a ton of questions about our taxes. So yes, we pay taxes just like everyone else. Our property tax rates are determined by the government, and the only parts of our facilities that are tax exempt are the prayer halls in Vernon River and Brudenell. We also pay sales tax, but as a registered charity, we do receive 5.5% credit. But we trust that you, as the government receiving our taxes, know this. Many islanders are curious about how we are funded. In Buddhist tradition, a monastery relies on donations. It's come to our attention that accusations of money laundering have been made against our Buddhist group. Our donations come from the hard-earned money of our parents, friends, and laity, some of whom may save up years of savings to make a donation. While we welcome all questions and open dialogue, it is a serious matter when rumors suggest acts of felony and do not constitute open and respectful dialogue. If you have any questions about this, honorable members, please ask. Some of our islander friends showed us a question posted online that said, international students at GBIS and GWBI are receiving wire transfers from Taiwan and or China and are then donating large sums to the monastery. I actually asked our GWBI finance personnel about this, and she said very few nuns donated a lot of money to the monastery. But I found out that one of the nuns who did was actually Venerable Yvonne. She was very hesitant to share her story because her donation was quite large, so she didn't want to boast or seem special. And it was also a very personal decision. But I found her story quite touching and asked if she could share it with us today. Venerable Yvonne's upbringing was very unique. When she was just 14, her parents sent her and her younger brother to live in New Zealand by themselves. Her parents bought them a house, and Yvonne had to learn how to cook and basically became a mother to her younger brother. Anyways, I always love hearing stories of our nuns, and because everyone is so different.
So I was very fortunate to be brought up in a comfortable and loving home. My mom was general manager for several multinational banks. My dad has his own brand of jewelry stores in a few countries. Before I joined the monastery, my dad once drove me up a mountain in New Zealand and told me he wanted to buy a vast piece of land and build a beautiful house for me. And I looked deep into his eyes and said, "Dad, I can feel your complete love, but you don't need to do that. I want to pursue my dream, which is not owning beautiful clothes and houses, but to better myself with kindness and wisdom. I want to devote my life to exploring my inner world." And I remember the day my parents took me to the monastery. They told the abbess, "We're happy to place our daughter's hands in your hand." It was almost like I was getting married, just not to another man. Since then, the monastery has never asked my parents for a penny. I feel the monastery cares about my personal growth more than anything else. It has provided me with everything I need: food, clothes, transportation, lots of textbooks, etc. And this treatment is not just for me, but for any female who wishes to pursue this path. I'm sure many of you can relate as parents. Imagine you're raising a lot of children and none of them work to make money. You will know the amount of responsibility the monastery has. And in Taiwan, some of my family members and laity chose to make personal donations to me over the years, especially my parents who still wanted to take care of me. What they could not give me day to day, they expressed through their donations. I saved the donations in my personal bank account. Since the monastery provided me with everything, I never had to spend it. And one day I realized these donations had accumulated to a sizable amount. So I closed my eyes and made a wish, thinking that I would do this quietly. I wanted to repay back the kindness and support the monastery has shown me all these years. I believe they will use the money to support more women. So 5 years ago, I made a large donation to my monastery, and it has made me so happy to see other women fulfill their dreams just like me.
We just ask that people get to know us before saying that we are involved in money laundering or other criminal activity. The next concern we'd like to address is we've heard that we have plans to bring 20 to 30,000 people to PEI, and this would give our monastery roughly the population of Charlottetown. To this, we have 3 answers. First, this is impossible. Second, this is quite impossible. And lastly, this is again impossible. It'd be great if nunhood was in such great demand, but once you learn about our lifestyle, I don't think that many people will rush to sign up. Our hairstyle, our outfits, and our no-makeup look isn't all that enticing to girls these days. And the determination to attain life goals comes with a lot of discipline, including limited use of technology and access to media. In this day and age, enough said. And even though I've been a nun for almost a decade and I do love this life, it's not always an easy path. For instance, it's been a few days now and I still can't get the Friends theme song out of my head. So it really isn't the life for everyone. You have to really want it. And I can't imagine 20 to 30,000 girls with posters of Buddhist nuns on their walls dreaming about this life every day. So we want to assure you that not only is this such astronomical growth not in our plans, it is also impossible.
And as nuns, we spend our days in a routine that includes prayer, work, and learning. We've learned that sometimes incredible stories or misunderstandings about us get promoted on the internet and we do not address them. We do not address them sometimes because we don't know that they have been posted. Sometimes because they seem pretty unbelievable and we are surprised to hear that these rumors spread. But now we've learned that they can take on a life of their own if they are not addressed. As Buddhist nuns, we do not wish to bring any harm or concerns to anyone. And as we have said, we also have made some mistakes that we have learned from and we're now repeating. Honorable members, members of the media, islanders, and those in our community, we want to thank you for giving us this time to listen to our thoughts. Should you have any questions, we welcome the opportunity to explain and to learn. Thank you.
Let's go. Thank you. We'll start with questions. Anyone? Darlene?
Thank you very much for coming in. I know there have been a lot of back and forth with your community, and as well, I represent Belfast Murray River, so and High Bank is part of that, and had a number of constituents who raised concerns, and I think part of it is because of the unknown. And as finance minister, I've been approached about property taxes and try to clarify that as well. And lately it's been about empty houses, and I know part of it would be families of monks and nuns, and I guess for government one of the challenges we have, and it's across the island, is we have a housing shortage, and when we see a bunch of vacant houses is a concern, especially houses that are year-round, year-round residents, not seasonal residents. So I think a lot of that comes from that. People are saying we hear there's a housing shortage, and how do we address that? And there are a number of vacant houses in the area, and not just nuns, but monks' families as well. I don't know what the total would be, but and I don't know if you can comment on the monks and how many family connections they would have that are purchasing houses as well. But just wondering, what we've heard from the nuns, and it is an issue for sure. So.
I think you brought up a good point about unknown. So I think because for the parents, their personal information, sometimes it's hard for the monastery to kind of talk to them or ask them to disclose that information. But what I personally think is we can be a bridge. I think they need some educational sessions so that they know about, for instance, I learned from our neighbors that why is that vacant homes has such impact for PIs, because we need local resources. But when you have a vacant home, you block the opportunity for others to move in, and then you don't go to the supermarket, you don't go to the local petrol stations. So it's like a waste of the resources. But we need that for local families. So if the Buddhist families or the parents, if they know that, I think they would definitely figure out a solution to do it. But right now we don't have that platform. So if we can think of something to have them know about this or educated, I think in the future maybe we can figure out a solution. But that's what I think.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, again, I think it'd be very helpful if maybe we can work with government or other local organizations to help us with that, just because, we're still learning as well, I think, about the island culture and about ways that we can, I think, contribute and work with the community. So if you have any ideas on that, I think we'd love to hear that.
Darlene?
Thank you, Chair. And just, I guess, adding on to that, the fact that I represent a rural community, and when you see vacant houses in a rural community, and rural communities are struggling anyway to keep residents there and to keep that fabric, of traditions and history, and just to keep the rural communities surviving, there is a migration into urban areas anyway. And then when we see houses that are sold, and you can't blame the owners because they want to move, but then when they are vacant, it does affect our communities as well, our schools and the number of students that are there. And so for rural communities, I think it's really important. And I think that for the Buddhists to understand that that's one of the main concerns. It's not just about your culture or your families or the fact that you're coming, but it's about there's only so much land, and there are only so many properties in a rural community, and when a number of them are taken up by non-resident, and they're vacant for quite a while, or most of the year, then it does affect communities. So I think it's important that the Buddhist community is aware of that as well.
For what you said. Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to thank you for bringing that up, I think, about wanting to preserve, I think, the rural community. I grew up in an more urban area. This is kind of my first time when I came to BI living in a rural community. And I really love the rural feeling of living in that rural lifestyle. It's the first time, we were picking crab apples and making our own jam. It's the first time I've made jam, and I love it. And I love the slower pace, and I love being with nature. And this is really something that not a privilege that I think we could have other places. And so I think we also want to preserve that rural lifestyle. And so I just want to thank you for bringing that up, and I think that's something that we would really like to work on as well.
Darlene?
So just one more comment. The impression that I keep hearing from my constituents and from Islanders is, once the land has been purchased by, someone from Taiwan or someone connected to the Buddhist community, we'll never have the opportunity to buy it back. So I think that whether it's true or not, it's an assumption, and I think those things feed on one another, as you're well aware. And Islanders are concerned that they won't have an opportunity to purchase that land in the future. So that's another concern that I like to refer.
Thank you for that.
up a really good point. Actually, in a few days ago, we were just discussing that actually we don't want to live in a Chinatown ourselves. So I just overheard some of our individual nuns who own some properties around the monastery because some of the Islander family are approaching them to buy land from them. And then because I think the individual nun, they are thinking of we want to welcome Islanders into the community because we need reminders. We need people teaching us the history of the land. So we don't want to be that exclusive. So I think right now there are some land deals going on just to like for us selling back the properties.
Gord?
I'd like to thank you all for coming in, Sabrina, Yvonne, and Joanne. You did an amazing job of presenting, and it was really, really nice to hear your stories and how your community has really tried, and you've come into PEI and you've made Prince Edward Island better, and we thank you for that. A few of the things that you talked about is you talked about reflecting the hardship of newcomers, and I think that's a real theme. That's something that I've been working on quite a bit here in Prince Edward Island. Can you talk a little bit more about what it is like to be a newcomer coming to Prince Edward Island?
First, you have to face the language barrier. And then you have to know like the weather, what the weather is like. I remember the first few years, like we're here and then we didn't know what to wear. So we didn't wear enough. So that a lot of nuns started to get sick. And then we started to know that it's important to wear a lot of clothes. And then some of our Islander friends told us that we look like onions because we have layers and layers. Some of the nuns, they will wear like 5 or 6 layers of socks during winter time or 4 layers of pants because they didn't know how to, we're still like learning how to eat it. And then some of the nuns are still trying to learn how to eat oatmeal in the breakfast. And that's just for the nuns, but for the parents, because, well, that's I would say, I don't know if it's a mistake, but this is a mistake we're learning from as well, because when our parents or laity, they came here, they only knew us, and then they couldn't know how to speak English well. So when they purchased their land, they asked for us helping them translate. For instance, how to communicate with the Islander for helping them taking care of the land deals. And then so we helped them translate. But later on, we were warned by some of our friends that it will look very bad if the nuns are helping the laity translate English during their land purchase. And then so we're like stuck in the middle and thought that so we can help them out. It will look very bad in the community, but they're new here and then no one was helping them out. So what can we do? So there are a lot of time, for instance, like I think a parent of the nuns, they bought the house here and then the parents asked the daughter to kind of help them take care of the house during winter time. But the nun was like, no, mom, I can't go to your house. If I ever go to your house, people will say the monastery is controlling like our laity's house, so we can't go. So I think these are some of the stories I knew of that we're storing, but we understand that Islanders are not thinking of like us in a bad way. It's just that we're very new here. We're very foreign, and then we're not the best storytellers either. And then we're being too quiet in the past few years. So I think that's our responsibility to go out and be visible and then to explain that.
Can I add on to that? As newcomers, I think, what does it feel like? It's kind of like you don't know anything and you're in a new environment where you need a lot of help. And I remember, so for instance, like PI has the most beautiful grass in the world. Like the lawns are so beautifully, like so beautiful, trimmed, like perfect. So like we mentioned before, like we came from a lot of like the nuns, like I came from, I thought it was a very quaint suburb. I looked it up yesterday and 68,000 is the population, but it's very, very small from where I'm from. And so a lot of people don't have lawns, or maybe we don't know that like in California, the grass isn't kept that short. And so our neighbors would remind us like, hey, you should probably cut your grass a little bit shorter. And we were like, yeah, we cut the grass already, but we didn't know that it had to be like that. That was like the standard in PI. And so I think it's just we don't know anything. And so everything I think settling down in PI, we've really appreciated Islanders, like our neighbors and our friends who've really kind of helped us along, because it's kind of like you don't know anything. And so even if you tell us something, we might not necessarily understand the first time. And we really appreciated the reminders and the help. Yeah, and the patience. And
I still remember in the past few years, because we have Buddhist retreats every year. And then normally we only gave them Buddhist teachings. But I think in the past 2 years, we started to include more local classes in our Buddhist retreats, for instance, to kind of educate the laity that we are so different. So don't just use that Asian way in local society, because we'll look very weird. For instance, like Asian loves wearing face mask, even though it's not during pandemic. And Asians love to have like umbrellas in the summertime. And then they love to talk to you in a very close distance. So all these things we have to kind of share with them, and then you know, it's an education, mutual education as well. And then we learn from our failures too.
Gord?
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. And I was at the presentation maybe about a year ago over at the Murchison Center, and it was we talked about some similar things, and I just wanted to kind of maybe make a note to the Minister of Finance that we had 2 other ministers in yesterday arguing the exact opposite thing that you were arguing. So I'm not sure what it was, and then we talked to housing and stuff. You are, you know, talk to your constituents, but at the same time, we should not be here talking about this. And I mean, we need some direction and some leadership with issues around, you know, newcomers coming into the province and feeling welcome. A lot's happened this year, and there's a lot of xenophobic kind of discussion that we talked about here today. That's what being a stranger and a guest is, and being fearful of that. And as Islanders, I think that we have to work on that, and we have to start now. So what you've done today is you've come in and you've let us into your world, and you let Prince Edward Islanders into your world, and you know, the things that I hear are all positive from what you've done. And you did ask about, you know, do we have any ideas? You know, reach out, be part, do exactly what you're doing. Don't be scared to come in and explain things to us and our way of life and our culture, because we want you, and we want you to feel accepted on our great island. So thank you very much for being here, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Questions? No? You sure? Michelle?
Oh, no, I just said, Corey, if you wanted to go ahead, you go ahead.
Okay.
I know that you would.
Hal?
Thank you very much, and I want to thank you for coming in today. I'm from the opposite end of the island, so when the motion was put forward to have you come in, I was excited to hear your story, and I was very pleased today to be enlightened on who you are and what you do, and I think I'm very happy I came in to listen to it. And I think as Islanders, we all have that responsibility to learn and to be educated on. We're such traditionalists on the island, and sometimes we're scared of change. But you know, there's a strategy for population growth on Prince Edward Island, and we have to welcome everyone with open arms, regardless of their culture, their beliefs, or what have you. So I do appreciate you coming in today. A couple of questions. You mentioned about having some nuns living in the lobster shanty. I think you mentioned was 65. And I believe the fire marshal had mentioned that you should soon start looking for new places to live. How is that going to affect your organization at this time if there's already a housing shortage?
That's a really good question. I'll go first. Because our plan was that if our construction project can be initiated before winter time this year, and then probably next year or the year after next, we can move them to Brudenell. But now, since the project was denied, we're thinking of other alternatives, but want to find the balance in a way we can make a decision based on the best interest of those nuns. At the same time, we don't scare people, so that it could be like buying individual houses, but I don't think it's a really good idea because 65 they have to split into so many homes, and then what we would do about the houses after they leave. So right now we're thinking of maybe pulling in more mini homes, but that's still under discussion. We still don't know yet. And if you have any better suggestion to help us seek that balance, it's better for island community, and also we can find a place to live, that would be really, really appreciated. Yeah.
Hal?
So when you mentioned bringing more mini homes in, I'm assuming you're referring to the McLeod Farm in Vernon Bridge, is that correct? So what are the conditions like there presently?
I think there are 10 mini homes.
We have 10 mini homes there. We have a farmhouse. It came with a couple motel rooms as well, and then we had kind of some makeshift dormitories. We have some classrooms there, and so that's kind of.
That is pretty tight over there. So we have to have more facilities if we want to move those 65 nuns there.
Hal?
Chair, and that was what I was going to get at. I didn't know what there was for the possibility to expand on that particular property, and what are your long-term plans for that property?
As we mentioned before, if everyone could move to Boudinot in the future, if everything goes well, and we will keep that location as future Buddhist retreats accommodations for parents or laity.
Hal?
You had put forward a proposal to the municipality in 2019, and it was approved. So I find it interesting that it was your application to build this residence was denied. What was the reason?
That's a very good question.
I'm still puzzled till this very day. I don't know.
Well, when we were in the council meeting for Three Rivers Town, I appreciate their job because I think all they were trying to do is to find a better solution for the whole community. So, we were told during that meeting that that meeting was no longer, the scope was beyond the building permit, even though we met every single requirement. But they said that the most important thing is about what we will bring into the community in the long run. For instance, the vacant home. So they brought up the vacant home issues and how much land we bought, and then how we're going to use the land. And they received a lot of concerns from the residents. So we understand that maybe they think it's not the right timing to build over there.
Hal?
Thank you, Chair. So you mentioned that they said they wanted to find a better solution for the community. But does that community mean the residents of Three Rivers, or does that also include you guys? For the betterment of you guys?
I would assume so.
So what were the solutions that they suggested to help you guys out in this crisis?
They said they would like to talk to the province first. And then I think they said that they would like to spend probably 3 to 5 years to make sure they have a proper official plan for Three Rivers. And before that, they can't guarantee that the residents will feel comfortable about us starting our project there.
Right. From what I understood, is they needed to have like a plan to have like an overall assessment of how the Buddhist community would impact the greater PEI community, and so until that plan was in place, then it would not move forward, I think.
Hal?
Okay. Has anyone from the government reached out to you?
No.
From the province?
No. Probably because we are too shy. I don't know. So no one.
Well, we got invited here, so I think that might count.
Hal?
And so when you got, like I said, the motion was put on the floor for you guys to come in here. So how did you guys have communications with your local MLA, or how did you get here?
Our MLA, hoping that we can start to open up some communication channels, and then we were very thankful that he invited us here.
Hal?
So I'm assuming then that your local MLA is looking for us to give you solutions or some advice, I guess, and as a collective whole. I'm very, very happy that you came in to share your story, as I said earlier. I am not too familiar with all of the issues, again, because I'm kind of at the opposite end of the island, but I mean, I do keep an ear open, and I do find it, I said earlier, interesting. You may be puzzled by the reason why this development permit was turned down, and why there may be some pushback from the community. And I'm still not getting a clear answer as to why it was denied. And I don't think you guys have that answer either, really, truly. And I think you deserve to have that. Like any auditor who makes an application and it's denied, they have to have a good reason, regulated reason, as to why anything would be denied. So I'm hoping that they can, without you making an appeal, you said that you weren't going to make an appeal, that maybe they could rethink this and look at the value that your organization brings to the community. You mentioned that you bought 76,000 pounds of potatoes, put $10 million into the local economy. You know, have you had any communication with the business community in your area about the denial for future expansion? Because that's going to have a huge impact on them. Because you guys, like you said, not only do you pay property taxes, but you buy from local farmers, you're buying your local construction materials, you're utilizing, I'm sure, carpenters and what have you. So have you spoke to anyone, or have they reached out to you, the local business community?
Some contractors have reached out and said that they were disappointed to hear that it wasn't moving forward. A lot of them enjoyed working on the last project, and they liked working with the nuns. And so we have heard that they're, you know, disappointed that they wouldn't be able to move forward, that we're not moving forward with this project.
Oh.
You're good. I was just going to jump in if anyone good. And again, thank you all for coming today. And I think you can always feel probably maybe a bit of the tension in the air when these things are being discussed. And obviously, as Hal said, I think we want to try and find a way that, you know, to have you in the community and to have, you know, everyone, I think, because clearly right now there's a divide, right? And I think it was quite obvious at the Three Rivers Council meeting, you know, with hundreds of people in the parking lot. And, you know, how can we find a way forward that we can all be one community, get together supporting each other, right? And I think obviously, a lot of the questions are primarily around when it comes to land, housing, property availability, and really the rising cost, right? Because I can tell you it's probably one of the calls I get the most, followed shortly probably by school and hospital. So, you know, people concerned that if they're going to be able to have a family, raise a family, are they going to have property to build a house on? So I think these are all concerns. Yvonne, you had mentioned that, so does GWI assist parishioners in purchasing land and homes?
Well, assisting, well, the story is like this. So they have to want to have that land and house first, and then they pay for their, they have to, we never provide any funding for them to purchase, but we did help them with the English translation, because there are some islanders they have to communicate with during that transaction. But we only did it for the first few years until we learned that maybe it's not appropriate for us to help out, even though we were helping just as friends. So we kind of asked them, if you can find any friends on the island first they didn't have any friends, but later on now we have some parents who can live on the island year-round. So we would direct them to find those parents for help so that the individual nuns wouldn't be able to be involved. And then I agree with the land prices that you just mentioned. We heard about that too. And then to be honest, we did overpay in the first few years because we were new, and then the only resources we had was some of the local guys that we knew. And then, but I think we took advice after we heard about all these concerns, and no one wants to pay for like high prices. So right now, our solution to that is before anyone wants to proceed anything, we should seek for a local appraisal to make sure that it's fair market price before we do anything. That's something we can think of, but if you can think of any better suggestion, please let us know. We do need guidance.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's probably important to point out too that when we talk about land, there's a number of organizations, corporations, we have the Irvings, who there's many concerns about too, and how much land is owned. I'm just going to read out an email here, Yvonne, and
Sure.
If you could comment on this. So this is an email from GWBI. See if this will work. Let's pretend that the lay people are buying first for better negotiation and then transfer to GWBI later before closing. Sorry for the late response. This is another email. Thank you for giving us a quote for your beautiful home. I understand it is not easy for you to come up with such a decision since you have been in the house for so many years and must have so much memory in it. At this time, the Iraq investigation about our landholding is not over yet. However, some of our lay people might be interested in purchasing your house. But due to the investigation, we are advised by our lawyer not to be involved with lay people's purchasing activities. I'm just wondering if you can comment on that.
I think that's a few years ago, we communicated, we had a local consultant who helped us out through all these process. And then, can you repeat the first few sentences again about the transferring?
Yeah, it said, see if this will work. Let's pretend that the lay people are buying first for better negotiation and then transfer to GWBI later before closing.
Did it say what property was?
I don't have the property. I do have a name, but I don't want to say the name on just for privacy purposes.
Then pretend the laity will buy it and transfer it to GWBI.
Yeah, that's what the email says. Yeah.
I'm just trying to recall the memories. It's from GWBI email.
Yes, I believe from Janet.
Janet.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I have more information on that so I can go back
Yeah,
and check?
this is, well, it'd be a couple of years ago, but I have the email here. You would also mention, Yvonne, that, so there's 7 homes in the Brudenell area that are currently owned by GWBI.
Yes.
Now, would GWBI maintain homes for, I guess, nuns for them? Would they manage those properties?
You mean for GWBI?
Yes, would GWBI manage properties?
Manage others' property or GWBI? Yes. In the couple of years, that's one of the mistakes we learned from. Because there are 2 nuns in our monastery. They bought some properties in the next subdivision around the monastery, as far as I know. And then because they couldn't speak English, they bought the property with their families. They couldn't speak English, and they have limited usage of internet and cell phone. So they asked one of our nuns, and which is Venerable Janet, who helped them translate English. And at that time, because the nuns don't have personal email account, So they also asked another Buddhist nuns to use her email account instead. So because they were helping, at that time the history, if in my marriage was like, there is a homeowner association at that time, and then the new owner went to the previous homeowner association, and then the previous homeowner association said that we no longer want to manage the properties because they have to collect the fees from all different households to pay for the road pavement. So the previous homeowner association asked the two nuns as the owners to manage the properties for them, and then they said that due to our language barriers, and then we don't know how things done locally, so can you do it instead? But the previous homeowner association, the residents said that since you're the new owner, you should take care of it. So they said, okay, if we should serve the community, then we would do it. But we need to find our friends to help us out. So they asked Venerable Janet instead to help them translate the English and then collecting the fee. And then they're using another individual's nun's email account to collect the fees, but the fees directly back to their personal bank accounts. And then, but after, I think that was for a few years, and then we shared this information with other Islander friends, and then they told us that even though you're doing this just as friends, but people will not understand how you manage things. So later on, I think Venerable Janet never, she stopped doing that for them, and then she directed them to find some laity people to help them take care of the properties. So in the first few years, yes, I think there was a nun from GWI who helped manage the properties for individual nuns. But I think it has fixed a few years later after she knew it was inappropriate.
Okay.
And for the letter you mentioned about what Venerable Janet wrote, I will have to go back and check with her because I have no information on that. And we can email all of you about her answers.
And Yvonne, sorry, just to clarify, what's your role is, so are you currently, you were the director of finance, was that?
No,
No,
I am the director.
You're a director, yes. And you weren't aware of individuals, you weren't aware of Janet doing this?
I wasn't the director when she was, that was a few years ago.
Okay, so I have an email here, so I guess like I mentioned, one of the concerns is that there's a number of houses sitting vacant. Mm-hmm. And in your presentation, you said there are 7. However, GWBI seems to manage a lot of these properties.
Because,
So
okay.
I have an email here, it says, and this is from you, Yvonne, this is
Mm-hmm.
an email sent by yourself. There's 12 properties listed, and so 778 doesn't need winterization, we'll use it for meetings. 258 needs winterization, no one will stay in the house during winter. Mm-hmm. And this kind of just goes on and on. So I guess, do you see where I'm coming from, that there's confusion around?
I can totally see that, and I think that's part of the hardships we want to convey today about the new immigrants. Because out of the 12 houses, there are 5 houses that are owned by individuals. And then at that time, there were one Islander friend who are helping us dealing with their landscaping and then also snow removal. But due to language barriers and the time differences, I was told to help out to compile the list so that the Islander community or their Islander contractors or their Islander landscaper doesn't have to contact them individually with language barriers and then all that. But since then, after that, I was told that it's not a good idea to do that. You can't help them out in this way. So I think in the past few years, all of the individual laities, they start to ask for their parents' friends for help, and we no longer help them out. So yes, in a few years' time, we did do that for them.
Okay. And I guess, so I have another email here as well, and it comes down to, is GWBI directing land and amongst nuns and parishioners, I guess. So this one here is, if you have time, would you please give these questions some thought before the meeting Wednesday and guide us? Thank you very much. So the first question, the land holding of one monk exceeds 750 acres. Should he file a report with IRAC as prescribed in LPA right now? Number 2, should the donor of the land, whose application with IRAC is pending now for the ongoing monastery construction, make a will to arrange this legacy ASAP? 3, one monk plans to give his 8 pieces of land to another monk. Can he proceed now, disregarding the investigation, or should he drop the idea until the investigation is over? And this email is from GWBI Finance.
I remember that. I still remember that because
Yeah.
that's during the IRA investigation. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was from one of our laity, but he works for Gbis. And then that's the email he sent to their lawyer. It's Gbis lawyer. And because at that time, we have an Islander friend helping out us as a consultant. So he asked for every email's copy, so we sent that to him. And then I think that's their emails regarding whether or not we should better comply with the regulation. And that's how I passed that emails to our consultant.
Okay. Thank you. Another question, has GWBI ever attempted to subvert IRAC?
Attended.
To I guess, go around the rules to avoid going to IRAC?
That's what we heard from our friends as well. And then we were told that, but I don't know which points that, because I was taught by a lot of loopholes that the organizations can do here on the island first. But I would like to make sure that we are on the same page, because one said that GWBI and Gbis are actually one entity, and we're just two created to get 3,000 land. That's part of it. But just like we mentioned, that we get our own fund and then we make our own decision. So I don't understand why that would be that way. And another things that I heard from others was we bought lands with more people so that we don't have to go to IRAC to submit our application. But as far as I know about GWBI's every properties, we never do that because GWBI is an organization we have to go through IRAC. And for the individual nuns, they never use many names to buy properties to avoid that. So if you can tell me specific example, maybe we can give you like detailed answers for that.
Okay, so I do have an example here, and this is an email.
Sure.
Again from Janet. Good morning. We made the deal yesterday with, and I don't want to use the individual's name, for the house and so much money for the house and so much for the land. Furniture will be purchased later as you had instructed. There are going to be 5 buyers to hold title to avoid IRAC application. The buyers are pretty happy with the price, and then it goes on. So I'm just curious if you could comment on that.
If I know of, there's only one house that I know of with 5 buyers. And I'm not sure if that's the same property, if that's the same one.
So I guess why would we be trying to go around the IRAC application?
Okay, so that's one question I was asked last year from one of our friends. And if that's the same property we're talking about, because GWBI leased that property to use for our self-quarantine during COVID. And if that's I talked to the owners actually. And then the owner told me that they didn't know anything about the 25 acre and then they can use 5 people to avoid that because in their sales agreement, they stated a first right of refusal to get another property besides the property they proposed to buy. So if you add in the total acreage of that first right of refusal, it will be exceeding 25 acres. So when I asked them about this question, they told me if my intention were to avoid that, then I would have to have 6 people. But we have 5 people to split the cost, and then so that was the answer I got from them. But if that's the same property, that would be my understanding of that.
Okay, so I guess were there 5 buyers to hold title to avoid IRAC application? So do you understand where people are becoming, this makes people
And
skeptical?
I think I heard from Janet, I think, a few times, that I think she was advised by some local realist agent. Is that the right word? Realtor. I think she was advised by some realtor that there's a way to do it. But I think she later realized that it's not the way it could be accepted. So if you can, I don't know if you can look at any other emails other than that. So I think in the first few years, maybe we were lacking of local knowledge, and we were advised by some people with what things can be done locally. But later on, we realized maybe that's not the correct way to do it, and we fixed it. And as long as I know is right now in our board of directors, we have consensus that we shouldn't do that. But in the past, maybe.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Michelle.
Thank you for your presentation. I also attended the Three Rivers meeting, and I would also agree that I was surprised that, you know, the outcome was what it was. So you've brought up your board of directors a number of times. Can you please kind of give us more of a description of how your board functions? You said it was an elected board. It's so who would be part of that board?
Right now, there are 5 board of directors in GWI, and me and Sabrina are in the board, and we have 3 other board members. The reason why we got elected, I guess, by the previous board of directors is because we know English, and then we can talk to people, and then to understand how just like what I think Mr. Deagle mentioned, that in our previous board, through a lot of failures or mistakes, we learned that sometimes the knowledge we learn from local people are not the best interest for the island. So they started to think that what can we do to better integrate to the community. So that's why when they elected the next board of directors, they picked the people who can really talk to the more people on the island, so that our opinions are not just limited to a few people that we got to know from right or wrong. And then we started to kind of seek for assistance from our legal advice, that to make sure that we let them know everything before we take actions. So yes, I think we did make some mistakes, but if we know that's not right, we will not do it again. And then I think that shows even more about what Mr. McNeely mentioned, that we need guidance, legal guidance or anything that we can think of to fit in, because I think there were some mistakes we made, but I don't think any venerable nuns, even including Venerable Janet, she never had intention to do anything to harm others. And I think she would, if she were here today, she would admit to you that, yes, I did something wrong. And then I will apologize for that, because from my limited knowledge, that how things can be done locally. But if I can do it again, I will never pick that. I will try to do everything I can to respect the local regulation and community. Yeah.
Michelle?
Great, thank you, Chair. And thank you for that. So there's 5 members on the board. I find board structures very interesting, because really they are the ones that would guide the overall strategic plan and ensure that, you know, that plan is being implemented. And so who else would be on that board?
We have one Venerable Angeline, and she oversees making sure the construction project fitting the traditional monastery culture. And then we have another one is Venerable Heather, and she's our vice president. And we have one more, it's Venerable Qishan. She doesn't have an English name, and she's our president. And she is the head of education in our monastery.
Michelle?
Great, thank you. And you had mentioned Mary Jin. Can you tell me what is the connection between GWBI and Mary Jin?
We call our teacher Jenru. We don't call her Mary Jim first to clarify.
No, that's fine. I didn't know it was the same person, so thank you for clarifying.
And her relationship with us is she is our spiritual teacher. And then she's been our teacher for, I believe, since 2014. 2014. 2014. Yeah, so it's 6 years? 2014. 2004. So she has been our spiritual teacher since, sorry about that. Our previous teacher, he passed away in 2004, yes. And then she became his successor after that. But since then, we've been encountered large difficulties because it's extremely rare, especially in traditional Chinese Buddhism, to have a female leader. And she is not a monk or a nun, she's a laity. And our previous teacher picked her because she is the best student out of all. And then I know there are a lot of online articles and stories about her. And I don't think it's hard to imagine there will be a lot of stories because it is extremely, imagine a female pope. That would be like, and a lot of disgruntled members left our group because of that, because of the unacceptance of female leaders. And to me, I personally feel that I can only say for myself, I abandoned a lot of things to becoming a Buddhist nun. And all I want to do is to find out how to better myself. So we observe her every single day after she became the leader because we didn't want to put our life in wrong person's hand. And then we learned debating in the monastery, so we don't believe in blind faith. Everything Buddha told us that you have to examine every word I say. Don't trust it because you trust me or respect me. So that's the principle of how we learn Buddhism in monastery. So we examine her words and we observe her behavior until we are convinced. Otherwise, believe me, I'll be the first one to leave. And so there are a lot of unreliable sources on internet, but I get to see her, I get to talk to her, and I got to observe her reactions when she's facing difficulties. So I personally feel that her relationship with the monastery is she gives out teachings, and she's not, when we talk about she's not involved in the day-to-day operations, that means she gives out teachings and we are inspired by that. For instance, I remember a few years ago, she talked about the island has been so kind to her. So when she read the news of the young children on island couldn't afford to have breakfast, she said she couldn't sleep for that night. And then the Buddhist monk, I think some of the Buddhist monks heard that and they said that, okay, we want to do something that is to kind of donate the bread rolls to the school. So since then they are doing that. So for the plan of donating bread rolls that's initiated by the students, she no longer involved with that plan, but she will initiate an idea of like what is compassion, what is wisdom, and then we got inspired by her, and then the plan was executed by the monks and nuns. And the same goes to laity. Like we only give out teachings to laity, but their business, we don't get involved in that. So that's similar to that. If you want to, then you can do it anytime.
Basically, I think the same thing. I think that, for myself, again, I think I gave up, I think would have been, I hope it was a successful life in psychology back in California, but, from listening to her teachings and teaching Buddhism, and our texts aren't that easy to understand, and so I gain a lot of understanding from her, I think, in terms of the Buddhist teachings and our practice, and I myself feel that I have become a lot happier and a better person through that, and so I think that's how I would explain it.
And for what Mr. Deeble mentioned, I would just want to guarantee that if any directors know from now on anything is illegal or will be violating the local regulation, we will never do it. We only did it because we were ignorant, out of lacking of local knowledges, because I think we're educated from a modern society. So not to mention the spiritual level, even an average, normal, ethical standard person will know that don't break the rule. That's how we were raised in the society. So we will not abandon everything into the monastery to break the laws. So if we knew about it, we would never do it. And then if people think that we make mistakes, we can apologize, and then we can receive punishment. But this is our home. We want to stay here long term. We want to figure out the right way to live here, so we need your help. And that's what I think.
To add on to Venerable Yvonne, as Buddhist nuns, we have vows, precepts, and so I think if we knew that any of our actions would bring harm to another living being, even if it's like an animal or something, we would definitely not want to do it. So let alone like breaking the law or bringing harm or concern to islanders or anyone. So I mean, I think it's just out of lack of knowledge, and maybe we're just ignorant. But if we were to know, we would definitely not do it.
We're open to any options, including selling all the properties. I mean, the properties you think that are improper acquired, we are open to sell it back to the island. So we just want to stay here and then know better. That's it.
Michelle?
Yeah, no, I don't think I really have any other, I guess one other question, and I'm just still around the board structure is where I'm at. So just to bring you back there, and I understand that there's a lot of challenges that you've been experienced through all of this, but based on the board structure, so Jinru, can you tell me, is she also the spiritual leader for Gbis as well? Is it the same person? Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions. I appreciate your presentation today. It was thorough, heartfelt, and I really appreciate you coming in.
Lynn?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming in today. I have found this to be a really interesting conversation, and I certainly feel like I've learned a lot. I don't actually have any questions at the end of everything that you've presented. I feel like you've given us a really clear understanding. I suppose one comment that I would like to make, I am hearing from members in the committee saying things like we're concerned about empty houses, and I understand that concern. And also, I think that we have a significant problem in this province with empty houses that are Airbnbs. And we certainly have empty houses that belong to cottagers and people for all different reasons who may have empty houses. And in spring, just a few months ago, we were talking about cottagers and saying we shouldn't be concerned, they are islanders. And I'm just not sure why we would see differently about our Buddhist neighbors. I don't know why this would be a different concern. I don't know if the finance minister wants to speak to that. But empty houses for families, or empty houses that are Airbnbs, or empty houses that are cottagers, I think if we were to do an assessment, the people who are laity in your community would probably be a fairly small percentage of those empty houses, unless I have estimated that inaccurately. But that's my comment. I'm not sure it's a bigger concern than some of these other empty houses. Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you, Chair. And I don't really have any questions for you either, but I've just been sitting here listening to your story, and I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but I personally have met with the nuns many years ago when you were in early development, and I can tell you that the contractors on the other side of things would say things like the nuns have deep pockets. And so I just sympathize with there was definitely a language barrier at that time, and I sympathize with the nuns trying to navigate around the local culture and whatnot, and perhaps taking some bad advice. So I also come from I'm a private businessman myself previously, and I've certainly gotten all sorts of bad advice myself on perhaps you should try this transaction, but I would have enough wherewithal and local knowledge to say that's not above board, and no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So I also sympathize with the fact that coming into a culture like Prince Edward Island, where everybody knows what's going on back and forth, having that language barrier and getting bad advice would be quite a trap you could fall into. So I just wanted to say thank you for your presentation. And moving forward, I think you've got the great strategy of just being 100% open and transparent. That is what's going to get you the trust you need. These past mistakes are something that everybody's going to have to answer for and whatnot, but moving forward, you've got the right strategy. So thank you for coming in.
Hal?
Thank you, Chair. And I want to echo my colleagues' sentiments exactly too. When we move here, when people move here, especially newcomers who may have experienced, as stated, language barriers, or there's a lot of hurdles that people go through, and people often, unfortunately, take advantage of this opportunity negatively. And I'm really sorry that you have experienced that in the past, and you've had some bad advice a number of years ago, and mistakes from overpaying and such. So my question basically is, can you talk a little bit about what you've learned through that experience?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I've been reflecting that for many years because the Buddhist teachings taught me that when something bad happened, I shouldn't blame others. I should always look into myself and find out a solution that I can improve on. So in the past few years, yes, we made a lot of friends, and we want to appreciate everyone who teach us everything. But we're still figuring out how to trust the right person, of course. And then our values is we should be responsible for every word we say and every actions we take. So I still want to, probably one thing I want to learn about it is we're not perfect. And then we made some mistakes, but we never have the intention to lie or to avoid or to cheat or to lie or to hurt anyone. And then if there's anything we've done, I don't think the responsibility is blaming someone giving us bad advice. Is that it's our responsibility to fix that, and then if it's our fault when we come out to apologize. And because, to be honest, I'm tired of that chasing and hiding games process. We just want to come out and then let you see who we are, and then don't hide anything. And if there's anything that we should fix or move on, then we will do it. So, but we really need local guidance because sometimes it's harder for us to navigate all this process alone, and we didn't have any chance to make sure who is the right person to talk to. And so if there's anything that we did wrong, we will not hide it. We'll admit everything, but please help us how to fix it. And then we don't want to make the same mistakes again. And then so that's why we really need your help. And then probably we're here too late, a little bit too late. We should be here a few years earlier so that we can fix the problems sooner. But I thank you again for giving us this opportunity.
Hal?
Thank you, Sharon. Really, really like the words that you chose and the fact that you take the responsibility on yourself. As I wish so many others would do the same. And instead of pointing the finger and blaming others, that they take that opportunity from whether it be a mistake or poor advice and to learn from it and not to make the same mistakes again. So I really, really do appreciate your words. So I just want to go back, Chair, to you read from a few emails. Where do those emails come from?
Do you have questions for the?
No, I have. I'm going to ask you. You had read emails. I'm going to ask you if you could table those emails because you read them out in the House. So I'd like to see them.
Does that work, Clerk?
You can send it to me and I can distribute it to the committee if that's what they wish.
Sure. Yeah.
And I have one more, just a closing statement, if you don't mind, Chair. I said thank you many times for coming in and enlightening us and sharing your story with us. And I want to say one final time, again, thank you. In my district, there's a sizable Filipino community, and they've been growing over the last few years. And so I can appreciate some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that you face as newcomers to the island. This community in Tignish, I just absolutely love them. I love their culture. I love to learn from them. I love the way that they're trying to fit into our community. And I ensure that I go and I speak to them to ask them if they have any questions or if they need any direction or any advice that I could possibly give to them, because they're very valued. And they do offer a lot, as you do to your community too. So I want to thank you for coming in. We talk a lot about sustainability, and one key piece to sustainability here on Prince Edward Island is population growth. So we should be encouraging that in whatever capacity that we can, especially as legislators. We should be doing all we can to encourage people to move to not only to the urban centers but to rural PEI also. Because rural PI is really, really important to the economy of Prince Edward Island. And I like the fact that you guys are very careful stewards of the land. I'm presuming it's primarily organic foods that you grow, and you support local or organic farmers in your area. And a lot of the small businesses that I mentioned earlier that you do support. So I hope the committee can play a part in giving you some advice, and that you've identified some of your challenges here today. And we should all be collectively helping you find solutions. So I'm going to encourage the government to reach out to you. And I'm surprised that they haven't reached out to you at this point. I'm really surprised at government officials, with this being an issue that in the eastern end of the island seems to be a big issue. I'm surprised nobody's reached out to you to address these concerns and maybe hear your story and maybe give you some direction. Because when we arrive in new places as newcomers, mistakes are often made. And then I asked a question earlier about what you've learned in the past, and you know, we always do learn from mistakes. So there are some good people in this room. There's some good people in this province that can give you advice, and I hope we all do our part to help you. So again, thank you.
Lynn, I thought Lynn made a good point about Airbnbs, and that housing it's an issue across the province, and whether it's as you had mentioned, Lynn, Airbnbs, houses that are vacant, families can't live in it, in Charlottetown, Summerside, and really anywhere. And I think Al also made some good points there too. And obviously I was elected to represent my district and address their concerns. But I also have a role to play too, in that we want newcomers. We need it for our area. We need it to survive, for our economy. And how can we find a way forward that, you know, we can really come together and be in one community. And I think that's what we really want to work towards. You know, when I was out, I think it was last winter, the open house, and it was really quite amazing, the facility. And there was hundreds of people there. Like, the cars were lined up way down the road. Like, I think I had to walk like a kilometer just to get to the monastery. So I think the community wants to see you succeed, and hopefully we can find a way forward. So I want to thank you all for coming in. It's very much appreciative. And we're just going to we're going to recess for a moment just to let you pack up, and then we just have to go through the rest of our agenda. So thank you very much. Okay, back to our agenda. New business. Does anyone have any new business? Darlene?
Yeah, I'd just like to bring something up. I met with some of the farmers in my district about high-capacity wells, and I think it might be a good idea to bring in a couple of different family-owned farms and let them talk about their concerns and, you know, what their season was like this year and what they see going forward as far as being viable and keeping their operation going. So it's just an idea. I'm not sure.
Do you have any particular ones? in mind?
Well,
I guess I'm just,
yeah.
if we open it up, are we going to have every farmer in? That's my only.
Yeah, I don't think so, but it's just an idea. I haven't really sussed out exactly who we'd invite, but.
Hal?
Well, we did have the PEIFA in speaking on this issue, and they speak on behalf of farmers. I'm not sure if your farmers you spoke to are part of that organization or not, but.
They were concerned that they would just like to speak as farmers, like not as any group, but as farmers themselves. So I'm not sure exactly who we'd invite, but it's just an idea that was brought to my attention, and I want to share it. So.
Hal?
I'm not opposed to it. I'd actually love to have farmers come in and speak to them. I'm just, I guess it is natural resources, so it is part of our, I'm kind of getting this committee mixed up with the special committee on climate change too. Yeah. And some days I'm wondering, well, who did we have in presenting to which committee? I have to go back and do some research to figure that out. And that's when I met with the PIFA. I think it was the climate change committee that they came in, was it not? Or was it this committee? So it was this committee. Okay. So it was this committee. So would we benefit? We're going to benefit, of course, here from Islanders and farmers. It's just, how much of a priority is it this time?
Well,
Darlene?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked over the schedule as to what we've got on the docket from now until Christmas, or at least till the House sits. So I don't know if there's an opportunity, but it was just something that was brought to my attention, and thought I'd share it. So.
Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. I can appreciate wanting to bring in any individual to talk. I can see a lot of value in talking to farmers, but I think then we find ourselves in a situation, we're not just going to bring in farmers from your district, of course. So then we're going to, if we're not going to bring in an organization, to Hal's point, we did speak to the Federation of Agriculture. If we wanted to speak to the Farmers Union or another group, I have no objections to that. It's just otherwise we're all going to be bringing in farmers from our own communities, if not an organization. I don't know how that ever works.
I just
Darlene?
think if we're looking at, for high capacity wells in particular, looking at different areas of the island and how it would affect that area, or how much demand is on, our actual water in, central part of PEI versus east or west, and how much irrigation could have helped this year, or how much of a challenge it was for a particular farmer, and maybe it's, 4 different farmers from across the island. I'm just putting it out there, and I don't know whether we need to do that, but I think speaking to someone who's actually lived it is important. So, yeah. Anyway.
Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. I know I'm not part of the committee, but I would be interested in knowing if the farmer has additional information that wasn't provided when the PEIFA was here that they didn't speak to, and if the farmers think that that is important to the conversation. They live it and they feel it every day. So I think that if there's something in addition to what the Federation of Agriculture has already spoken to, that they would like to share with the committee, they're impacted by it. So that's just a suggestion.
Darlene?
I can bring that back, Michelle, to the farmer and say, could you just review what was said by the FA, and we'll go from there. But it's just a thought for maybe the future. I know we're fairly booked up right now, so.
Claire.
So, sorry. The notice hasn't gone out yet. I had just run it past the chair, but the National Farmers Union, that we had agreed to bring in correspondence, I think that was back on the 25th. They're able to come in on the 5th. So they can come in to speak on that. That's what they wanted to, was high capacity wells and water regulations. As far as other meetings before the House opens, we are booked up. And I think even as far as like other time slots, it's pretty tight across the board. but it can be definitely something we talk about again. Yeah.
Michelle?
Just want to point out, though, correspondence, if they wanted to provide the committee with thoughts, a correspondence from the farmer or any farmer might be beneficial as well. Just a thought. I think that their thoughts should be heard. So.
Yeah, so they could write a letter to the committee with recommendations or their thoughts, and the committee can take it under. And it's something we can perhaps discuss at the next meeting too. Any further new business? Michelle?
Not new business, just follow up. I had written a letter requesting that IRAC speak to the progress on the current investigation. I mean, it's been a year now on, I believe it's October 29th, since they came in and said that they would have a completed investigation within the next 60 to 90 days, which means that we're well past the timelines that they gave us. And I think that the role of us as legislators is to hold to account what we're told in committees as well. And I'd just like to follow up on where that is and if there's been scheduling.
Did we discuss that at our last? I think we did.
Yes, I believe that the committee wanted to reach out to see what the status was, and then I haven't since heard back. We did send a letter asking for that.
That was 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Roughly. So if the committee, how they want to proceed.
And that letter was to IRAC?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, perhaps they could come and tell us then why they can't respond to us.
If that's a great.
If the committee's fine with that.
Yeah.
Good? Okay. All right, that's good, Michelle? Okay, any other new business? No? All right, motion to adjourn? Gord, so thank you.